I want to know, do we reincarnate? And if so, what part of us is reincarnated? Because why don't we remember anything about previous lives?
Okay, if you really want to know, here we go. Yes, we do, and reincarnation can be experienced either internally or externally, depending on our conscious involvement and agreement with the force that's developing us. Now, death was inserted into the system as a result of the breaking, the shattering of the first man, of the collective soul. And so each one of the parts of that soul is a so-called individual soul, and it consists of 613 desires to receive just for itself. And each one of these desires is influenced by a constant force of development that's working on it with the purpose of bringing it to its perfected state so that it's transformed into a desire to bestow. And this happens over and over again until all of them are corrected. So no matter how it may appear to us while we're undergoing this process, everything always progresses and it never falls back. All spiritual growth is cumulative. Now, on the internal, on the causal level, an incarnation begins with the appearance of a spiritual body, which is a desire, but in its uncorrected state. And first it feels pleasure by satisfying itself, and then inside of that satisfaction, it begins to sense that it's not just taking from nowhere, but that pleasure is being purposely given to it from a higher level. And now, since it feels that, it wants to reach that level of experience so that it can feel the pleasure of giving instead. But to do that, it has to stop receiving. It has to stop experiencing itself as a receiver. So it's given what's called a screen, an intention that allows it to do that. And this is really the beginning of new life on the inner level, rather than death. Because even though the appearance of each new state is first felt as empty or dark, that only happens because the vessel, the desire, still only identifies and is locked into its old definition of life and pleasure, the one that's trying to leave. So even though what's coming is bigger and better, it's so opposite a perception that we don't feel like there's anything there. Now, let's look at the unconscious physical level. Here, the exact same mechanism is perceived as a mysterious, intimate inner quality that clothes in a succession of protein bodies, each with its unique talents and personality, appearing and disappearing one after another over thousands of years. And with each cycle of death and birth, it completely forgets the conditions of its former life, because if it's going to encompass change and attain a higher level of reality, it won't be in that mind, because reality won't fit in there. And what it's been, how it's developed, and each past life accumulates as its innate nature. And a new mind functions as the operating system necessary for its next stage of development. So what part of us reincarnates? The individual soul, in the process of realizing its connection to the collective soul, is the basis of that inner part, the I. And the body exists in this world only to help it elevate and attain its true state. It's so insignificant in comparison to the soul that we can exchange organs and limbs with other species and continue to live, even without all of our body parts, because the body exists for the sake of the soul. So, a Kabbalist is a person who has studied and learned how to be consciously involved in this process of becoming like the will to bestow. And he can inwardly pass through many lifetimes in a day. And by doing that, the soul feels such delight that eventually he no longer needs to descend into this world, but exists in a completely different, eternal and perfected state. But until this inner quality awakens in a person where they want to work with the real causal process, they've got to continue to be born and to die according to the perception of the will to receive. So it's really our choice. We can do it one way or the other.